This video is for both CITS pre-calculus and regular pre-calculus, and pretty much any other math class that wants to use it. Generally what we're going to do here is go over some of the video or the calculator functions. Calculators, and I'm using the TI-83 Plus. So the keystrokes on the TI-82, the 83, the 83 Plus, the 84, and the 84 Plus should all be exactly the same. Okay? Now, I'm going to make 3 short videos here. The first one, we're just going to go over the graphing functions and setting up your window. Okay, and then just a few quick functions. Then I've got one that I'm going to make for scatter plots and line of best fit. And then a last one for using some of the keystrokes on it. So I decided on 3 videos because then you can kind of skip to which one you need the most. Okay, so starting out with the calculator, I've got 4 different functions here. Okay, and what I'm going to do is go in and I'm going to put all 4 functions in. So when you're doing this, to go into your calculator, we go on, and these are all in the y equals. So my y equals key is right here, and I can start entering these functions. My x is up here, so it's 2x plus 5 is the first one. 3x squared minus 2x plus 1. Negative x squared plus 2x plus 20. And now the last one's an absolute value. To find the absolute value, hit 3, and most of the functions are under the math key here. So hit math. Now notice I've got a cubed root function there and a 4th or 5th root. I would go over to number. The first one is absolute value. So I get absolute value, then put in my x minus 8, close it, and subtract 2. Now if I graph this, it's going to graph all the functions at one time because they're all highlighted here. I'm only going to do one at a time. So I'm going to go back to this highlight, the equal sign. I'm going to hit enter on that. Notice it unhighlights it. That way it will not graph. So I'm going to go and just do that on the bottom 3. So now when I hit graph, I'm only going to do the line. Okay, so that graphs my line. Now when you're doing a line, your window, your standard window is from -10 to 10 with a scale of 1. The big thing about using the functions on this calculator is that you have to be able to see in the window what you're looking for. And I'll explain that as I go through on some of these. Okay, so I can graph the line. We can trace numbers by hitting trace here. This up here tells you which line you're on. Okay, and I only have one line graphed right now. So if I want to find different values, I can go when x is 0, y is 5. When my trace is on, I can hit 1. It'll tell me it's 7. I can hit 5. It'll tell me it's 15. So on and so forth. Okay, I can hit -2. And it'll tell me where I'm at -2 and +1. Notice where the cursor is. Okay, so that's the idea with this, is that we're going to just kind of play with the graphing a little bit. I'm going to try and zoom this in. Hopefully I don't lose anything here. Oop, got a little blurry. That's fine, it'll focus in. There we go, that'd be a little easier to see. Okay, so that's what I'm just doing is this. Now I'm going to go back to y equals, and I'm going to turn the second graph on. Now if I leave the first graph on, it should graph both of them. Okay, so there's the graph of the first parabola. Now there's a lot of things that I can do with this, but when I hit my trace, I'm still on the line. So I'm going left to right. Notice how the cursor moves up and down the line. Okay, if I want to change the parabola, I hit the down arrow. Notice how it changes the equation at the top. Now when I go left and right, I'm on the parabola. Now just like with the line, I can do trace and I can hit certain numbers. What happens when it's 0? Oops, notice I'm on the line again. So I'm going to hit down arrow and then trace. It keeps switching me back. It shouldn't. It only wants me to trace 1. Well, that's okay. So what I have to do then, if I can only trace 1, I go back to the y equals. I'm going to turn the line off by hitting enter on that. Now I just have the parabola, and now I can trace it. So if I want to go 2, there's the value of the parabola at 2. If I want to go -1, there's the value of the parabola at -1. Okay? So I can do that with all of these equations. One thing I wanted to point out, I'm going to go back to the y equals. I'm going to turn the second one off, and I'm going to turn the third one on. Now when I hit graph, notice how it disappears. Okay, I can trace this for some, but I can't see anything up on the top of that equation. Okay, boy, I got some big hands in this thing, don't I? Hello. Okay, so what I need to do is change the window settings. I need to go higher on the Y. So on the Y, I'm going to go up to, let's go up to 40. Now what I do for scale is I take the difference between the numbers, in this case, which is 50, and I always divide by 20. What that does is it gives me a little bit better scale so I can see what's going on. Now I can trace that one, and I can say what happens when it equals 2, or when it equals 3, or when it equals 5. Okay, so on and so forth. Now those are trace values. We can also go into the table, which is second and graph, and it'll give us all the x values and their corresponding y values. Okay, now notice my graph is set up by 0.1, or my table is. If I want to change that, I hit second and go under table set. Now it's telling me I'm going up by 0.1. Table starts at 0.16. So I'm going to start the table. Let's start the table at -4. And I'm going to go up by 1 each time. Okay? Now if I graph it, and I hit my table again, second graph for table, I start at -4 and I go up by 1. And it gives me different coordinates for that parabola. Okay? So just different ways you can get values out of that parabola. The last equation, the absolute value, I'm trying not to make this video too long. I'm going to go down again. I'm going to turn this one off. And go down to the absolute value, hit enter and turn it on. And now I'm going to graph that one. Okay, there's my absolute value equation. Notice I'm kind of off over here. I want to see a little bit more of it. So I go back to my window, and that's my x-axis, only goes up to 10. Let's go up to 30. And now I'm going to change this as the difference between them, which is 40, and divide it by 20. If I graph it, there's my absolute value function. And if I go to table, it'll tell me values along that absolute value function. Okay, whole number values. Again, if I want to change what I go up by, I can change it by going second window up to table and say I want to go by halves. Now if I graph it, I go second table, I'm going by halves. Okay? So that's what we're doing. Big thing about the graphing is you have to solve them for y. You need to set a window up. And the window needs to be so you can see the graph. You can play with it a little bit. You can also, if you want to zoom a little bit, okay, so I've got a cursor here. Notice I didn't hit the trace. So my cursor is just floating in space. But if I want, let's say I want to see what happens down here and don't want to play with my window, I can put my cursor down there, I can hit zoom, go down to zoom in, and hit enter. Oh, and it won't give it to me. So I made an error, so let's go to the graph again. Oops. Okay, see what it did is it changed my window range, and it made them all positive. So that's not going to work. So let's put in -10 to 10, scale of 1 again, put the standard one in. This will give me part of it anyways. Now if I hit trace, and I'm on that line, where am I at? 1. I'm going to get this all the way so I can actually see it. Okay, let's say I want to trace, I want to see that. Now if I do my zoom and my zoom in, once I do it, I hit enter. I guess the zoom key is not going to work for me on that one. Well, that's my error then. So we'll just have to play with the window, and it keeps changing the window to the same number, which it shouldn't do. Okay, but we don't need the trace or the table because we can just change the window by ourselves. Okay, so that's in general. I know it's a little bit rusty or a little different, but that in general is working the calculator, just putting the equations in, graphing them, and using the trace key and the window key just to be able to find different numbers for it.